Welcome back to another edition of Paper Trails. We're circling back on the Sundown Towns series. I want to give a shout out to a user who dropped a comment, James Spitfire 9884. I think there's some sundown activity going on in Houston, Texas. They found 200 dead bodies in the bayou around Atlanta, Georgia. Feels safe, but not going to rural areas at night anywhere in North Georgia. Thank you for the comment. Once again, like, subscribe. I appreciate you, contributing to the channel. So before we go to Texas, yes, on Atlanta, Atlanta is, you know, one of those spaces where we are good. Um, yeah, I would even say the surrounding metro area on a whole. But yeah, the further north you go towards the mountains, it might get a little sketchy, even in 2025. You know, I seen some, rednecks, just to straight say it like that. They tried to run a lady off the damn road while we was, going up there one time. I was like, these motherfuckers is crazy. But they ain't try to run my ass off the road. But they damn sure tried to run this other lady off the road and shit. Um, but anyway, let's go on ahead and get into Texas. So we're gonna come at this slightly different. When people talk about sundown towns, they think about the Midwest, and they thinking correctly. Obviously, the first sundown towns were definitely in the South because that's where the majority of the ancestors were before they started to kind of branch out into other areas, right? They left down south to go up there to the Midwest thinking that they can live a better life. Um, a lot of them eventually did, but through trial and error, some of them stumbled into the wrong goddamn towns and either got ran out or strung up. It is what it is. Texas is larger than most countries, but this state quietly enforced racial exclusion across hundreds of miles. Not always with signs, not always with laws, but with silence. And that silence is preserved in a document that was meant to save lives called the Negro Motorist Green Book. Now, what's the Green Book? This was a publication that started in 1936. The Green Book was not a travel guide for comfort, it was a survival map. Victor H. Green created it so black travelers could avoid violence, arrest, or worse by identifying where they could safely exist. But what's most revealing is what's not listed in this book. In case that word is triggering some kind of thought in your brain, but Green Book is an actual movie where he plays, I guess, a musician who hires a white driver to drive him across country to his different gigs that he had, which was smart because if you got a white driver and the police driving, it kind of, it's like a hack to the racist system. Damn, we can't fuck with the white guy driving. You know what I mean? So that's where the word Green Book might be coming from in your mind when you like, oh, that shit sound familiar. There it is. Anyway, in the 1949 edition, Texas appears as a scatter of safe islands. So in the entire state, there's only 4 cities: Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and El Paso in the entire state that are listed in the Green Book as safe areas. Now, you might think, okay, that shit is cool. At least those was, the main cities that. No, in those cities, the ancestors still had to be careful because there were very specific streets, homes, and businesses in those cities that provided the safety. Okay, boom. We made it to the city, but then in the city, we still got to get to that specific block or business or to that person's house where we can be safe out of an entire state. That shit is crazy when you think about it. But that's the reality that, the ancestors dealt with. So if a town didn't appear in the Green Book, it was neutral, meaning it was dangerous. It was a sundown town. They can't be trusted, or else they would have been listed as a safe haven to go. So all of you devils potentially who come into the comments saying, "Oh well, my town is blah 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 blah. That my town is safe and we not as," then why the fuck it wasn't listed in this Green Book that has been published for many decades, that let and informed our ancestors where we could go without being harmed, lynched, arrested, beaten, whatever you want to call it? If your town wasn't listed in any of these books, then shut the fuck up. The sociologist and historian James W. Lowen, author of Sundown Towns, that defines them as places that intentionally excluded non-white people, especially African Americans. And this was done through ordinance, which are laws, violence, threats, or enforced reputation. Texas had dozens, hundreds of these towns. Because once again, this state is bigger than most fucking countries, and you name only 4 cities that have safe stops along the way. Come on now. So many of these areas and towns enforced exclusion long after slavery, and some well into the late 20th century. Let me just go ahead and list some of these towns that need to be called out for their history. So Elmo, Texas, 1892, they passed a formal resolution banning black residents outright, one of the clearest legal sundown cases in the state. That's on the books. Leggett, Texas, after 1919, imposed curfews on black residents and banned black gatherings, restricted access to public spaces like the post office and train depot. 1886, De Leon and Comanche counties, after a lynching, black residents were forcibly expelled en masse. Reports describe warnings posted telling black people to leave by sundown. Terrell, Texas, documented in the late 1800s as a town where black residents were barely tolerated. Exclusion was socially enforced rather than written into law. Alvin, Texas, by the 1930s, it was widely known as a sundown town. Black families were discouraged from living there through intimidation. You have Dalhart, Texas, one of several towns reported to have posted actual signs warning black people not to remain there after dark. And Vidor, Texas, perhaps the most infamous case long associated with Ku Klux Klan activity. Vidor resisted desegregation all the way into the 1990s, prompting federal intervention and national attention. These weren't rumors, these were systems of white systemic racism, white supremacy being enacted on full goddamn strength. Notice how towns like Elmo, Leggett, De Leon, Alvin, and Dalhart don't appear at all. Instead, the listings cluster around private tourist homes, black-owned businesses, and major cities with segregated neighborhoods. The Green Book doesn't accuse these towns, it simply avoids them. The avoidance is the evidence. Now, why private homes dominated Texas listings? In Texas, hotels were rarely safe. Black travelers relied on private homes, people willing to put their names and addresses in print. That wasn't hospitality, that was resistance, because public space in a sundown town wasn't just unwelcoming, it was weaponized. Many of these sundown towns never officially repealed their exclusion. They simply stopped talking about it. So that's something else to understand and do your research on. Modern Texas, unfinished history, right? So today, some of these towns will deny they past, others claim ignorance, but infrastructure remembers. Highways still bypass certain communities. Policing patterns persist. Economic exclusion lingers. History doesn't vanish, it gets normalized. The Green Book imagined a future where it wouldn't be needed. That future hasn't fully arrived yet, though. And in Texas, the gaps on those pages still tell the loudest story. Get at me in the comments. Let me know what state you want to learn about next, and we'll dive into it. Till next time.